I never thought I'd be writing a post like this, but here I am, pouring my heart out to strangers on the internet. My name is Mike, and this is my story about betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately finding a way forward. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for 6 years. At first, our life together was a dream. We had the perfect little house, a couple of dogs, and we were planning to start a family. But recently, things took a turn I never saw coming. It all started a few months ago when Sarah began acting differently. At first, I shrugged it off as typical stress from work, but then the signs became harder to ignore. She was frequently late coming home, claiming she was stuck in meetings or had to finish up projects at the office. I tried to be understanding, but the late nights and sudden bursts of "I'm too tired" when I suggested we do something together started piling up. I noticed she was spending more time on her phone, too. Texting more, hiding her screen when I walked by. Little things that seemed insignificant at first but eventually added up in my mind. 1 day, our neighbor Nancy, who has a penchant for gossip, asked me casually if Sarah and I had gotten divorced. My heart dropped. I laughed it off, trying to play it cool, but deep down I felt that twist of unease in my gut. Why would Nancy think that? What had Sarah been telling people? I confronted Sarah about it later that night. She brushed it off as nothing more than a silly rumor. "You know how people are, Mike. They love to talk," she said, dismissing my concerns with that familiar wave of her hand. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. Things escalated a few weeks later when I stumbled across an unfamiliar name in her phone. It was just a fleeting glance, but it was enough to ignite the fire of suspicion that had been smoldering in me. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. The name, Jake, kept echoing in my head. I had no idea who he was, but I had an instinct that he wasn't just a coworker or a casual friend. The more I thought about it, the more I started to piece together the clues. I recalled how Sarah would light up when she was on her phone, how she would rush to the bathroom to take calls, shutting the door behind her. With each passing day, my anxiety grew. I decided I had to dig deeper. I had a friend, Tom, who worked in tech and was good with computers. I confided in him and asked if he could help me track down any messages or calls that might clue me in on what was going on. He agreed, and we set up a plan to see if there was something nefarious happening. It felt wrong, invasive even, but my heart was breaking and I needed answers. The day came when Tom sent me the information he'd uncovered. There it was, clear as day, a string of messages between Sarah and Jake, the kind of messages that made my stomach turn. Flirtation, inside jokes, and even plans to meet up. My heart raced as I read through the messages, each one cutting deeper than the last. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. How could she do this to me? I thought we had built something real. I remember sitting on the edge of our bed that night, staring at the wall, feeling completely lost. I could hear Sarah in the other room, laughing and talking on the phone, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. I finally felt ready. I needed to confront her about this, and I wasn't going to let her talk her way out of it. I needed to know the truth, regardless of how much it hurt. When I confronted her, I could see the panic in her eyes. At first, she tried to deny everything. "Mike, you're being ridiculous. I would never cheat on you." But I laid it all out for her, the messages, the flirty conversations, the late nights, and the secretive phone calls. I watched as her face changed from shock to anger and finally to the classic blame shifting. "You're the one who's been distant," she yelled. "Maybe if you paid more attention to me, I wouldn't need to find it elsewhere." It was infuriating. I felt like I was in a twisted version of reality where the victim became the villain. That's when I realized that this was more than just an affair. It was a complete breakdown of trust and love. The emotional impact hit me hard. I went from shock to anger, and then to a deep sadness that seemed to weigh me down like a heavy fog. I could feel the tears stinging my eyes as I tried to reason with her, but all she offered were excuses and lies. My heart had shattered, and I knew everything was about to change. As I processed everything, I started to think about what I wanted moving forward. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? I had to make a decision, but I was still reeling from the betrayal. The days following that confrontation were a blur. I moved through life like a ghost in my own home, existing but not truly living. Sarah and I avoided each other. The laughter and lightness that once filled our home had been replaced by an unbearable tension. I felt estranged from the woman I thought I knew, and every time I saw her, I was reminded of the betrayal. I spent a lot of time at work, using it as an escape from the chaos that had become my life. I found myself distracted and emotionally drained, unable to focus on meetings or tasks. My colleagues noticed something was off and I had to force a smile, pretending everything was fine when inside I was crumbling. I confided in Tom more. He was my sounding board, the only one who knew the whole story. He couldn't believe Sarah had been unfaithful either. "You're a good guy, Mike. You deserve better than this," he said. I appreciated his loyalty, but hearing those words only deepened my resolve to figure out what I wanted. After a couple of weeks of silence, Sarah finally approached me. She wanted to talk. I was hesitant, thinking about the last conversation we had, the way she twisted the knife deeper into my heart. But I was desperate for answers. Maybe there was a chance to salvage something from this wreckage, or perhaps I needed closure. Either way, I agreed to meet her on neutral ground, at a coffee shop down the street from our house. As I walked into the cafe, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I spotted Sarah sitting at a table in the corner, her arms crossed defensively, her eyes darting around nervously. She looked beautiful as always, but the sight of her only brought back memories of deceit. I slid into the seat across from her, and for a moment neither of us spoke. The air was thick with unspoken words and lingering anger. "Mike, I'm sorry for what happened," she began, her voice shaky. I was confused. "I didn't mean to hurt you." The very words that came out of her mouth felt hollow to me. I wanted to shout, to demand how she thought confusion could justify betraying me, but I needed to hear her out. "I found the messages, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "There's nothing confusing about that. You were with someone else. You betrayed our marriage." She flinched at the word betrayed as if I had slapped her. "I didn't think it was serious," she exclaimed, her tone rising. "It was just a fling. I didn't want to ruin what we had." I was furious. "A fling? You don't get to decide what's serious and what is. You made a choice to lie to me, to go behind my back." I realized I was raising my voice, but it felt cathartic to finally let out the anger that had been simmering inside. "I know I messed up," she said, her eyes glistening with tears. "I just didn't know how to reach out to you. We've been growing apart for so long." I clenched my fists to suppress the wave of frustration. "So you thought cheating was the answer instead of just talking to me?" I felt like I was speaking to a stranger, someone I didn't recognize. "Mike, please," I was scared. "You seemed so distant, and Jake was. He was there. He listened to me." "You didn't," she said, each word spilling out in a desperate attempt to justify her actions. That's when I felt the sadness creep back in, an overwhelming sense of loss. I had tried to be there for her, but I had been oblivious to her struggles. I realized that our relationship had frayed around the edges long before this betrayal came into the picture. But how could she have sought solace in someone else instead of coming to me? "I don't know if I can ever trust you again, Sarah," I finally said, my voice low. "Trust is everything in a marriage, and you've shattered that." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks now. "I understand. I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, to earn your trust back." The sincerity in her voice was palpable, but my heart felt heavy. The scars from this betrayal would take time to heal, if they ever did. I was torn between the love I still felt for this woman and the pain she had inflicted on me. I made my decision that day, sitting across from the woman I once adored. I told her I needed time to think. I needed to process everything and figure out what I wanted for my future. I wasn't ready to cut ties completely, but I also couldn't pretend everything was okay. Leaving the cafe, I felt like a weight had been lifted, but at the same time, the future felt daunting. I started to reflect on every moment that had led us to this point. I realized there was no turning back to the way things were. I had to figure out a new direction, whether it meant staying and fighting for our marriage or letting go of the past and moving on. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I spent my days at work, but my mind was never truly there. Every meeting, every conversation felt like a blur as I replayed my life with Sarah in my head. I remembered the good times, the laughter, the love, the dreams we shared. But juxtaposed against those memories were the feelings of betrayal and abandonment. It was exhausting. Sarah and I continued to live under the same roof, but it felt like we were in separate worlds. I would hear her moving about in the house, but there was no longer any warmth in our interactions. We exchanged the occasional word here and there, but there was an invisible wall between us. I was still angry, but worse, I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness. I wanted to scream at her for the pain she had caused, but I also mourned the loss of the woman I fell in love with. Tom was my lifeline during this time. I met with him almost every weekend. He offered a listening ear and advice, reminding me that I needed to focus on what was best for me. "You deserve to be happy, Mike," he said one night while we were grabbing drinks. "You have to decide if Sarah is worth the fight. Trust me, it's okay to let go if that's what you decide." I appreciated his perspective, but the truth was, I was still hopelessly in love with Sarah. Despite everything, part of me wanted to believe that she could change, that we could rebuild what we had lost. I often found myself scrolling through our old photos on social media, remembering the joy we once shared. But then I'd snap back to reality, reminded of her infidelity and the lies that had seeped into our relationship. During one fateful night, I decided to confront my feelings head-on. I was restless, unable to sleep, so I took a walk around the neighborhood. I needed clarity. I needed to figure out what I wanted. As I walked, I noticed that the once familiar streets felt different. Everything had changed. I found myself standing outside our favorite restaurant, the place where we had spent countless date nights, laughing and dreaming about the future. I felt a wave of nostalgia wash over me, but it was immediately followed by bitterness. When I returned home, Sarah was sitting in the living room, her face illuminated by the television glow. She looked up as I entered, and for a brief moment our eyes locked. It was as if the entire world fell away, and I could see the pain reflected in her gaze. She was struggling too, and for a fleeting moment my heart ached for her. "Mike, can we talk?" she asked softly, her voice trembling. I hesitated, but I nodded. We sat down on the couch, and I could feel the tension between us like a taut string ready to snap. "I know I messed up, but I want to fix this," she said, her voice breaking. "I've been thinking a lot. I don't want to lose you. I love you." Those words struck me like a bolt of lightning. Love. It echoed in my mind, reverberating against the walls of my heart, but I couldn't just ignore the hurt. "You say you love me, but how can I believe that after everything? You chose to betray me. You turned to someone else instead of coming to me when you were unhappy." "I was wrong, I know that," she said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I didn't handle things the right way. I was scared of losing you, of the changes in our relationship, but I want to fight for us. I want to go to counseling. I want to work on our marriage." I listened, torn inside. I wanted to believe her, but doubt lingered like a shadow. "And what about Jake? What happens if you see him again? How can I trust you? I swear I've cut all ties with him." "It was a mistake, and I realize that now," she said, her voice filled with desperation. "Please, Mike, let's at least try. I don't want to lose you. I can't imagine my life without you." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. I was exhausted from the emotional turmoil. Part of me craved closure, while another part longed for the comfort of our past. I understood that rebuilding trust would take time, but was I willing to take that leap of faith again? "Let's try counseling," I finally said, feeling a mix of hope and trepidation. "But know this, Sarah, it's going to be a long road. I won't forget what happened easily, and it's going to take time for me to trust you again." She nodded, relief washing over her features. "I understand. I'm willing to do whatever it takes." In that moment, I realized that I had made a choice. I was going to fight for my marriage, but it wouldn't happen overnight. We both needed to face the reality of our situation, and I was prepared to dive into the uncomfortable work that lay ahead. As we began to discuss our options for therapy, I felt a flicker of hope ignite inside me. Maybe, just maybe, we could find a way back to each other. But the path ahead was uncertain, and I knew the journey would be filled with moments of doubt. I was ready to take the first step, but I also understood that this could end in either healing or heartbreak. I had to brace myself for whatever came next. The decision to try counseling was both a relief and a source of anxiety. I figured that having a neutral third party might help us navigate the wreckage of our marriage, but I also feared that facing the truth would only deepen the wounds. The first session came quickly, and I felt a mix of hope and dread as we walked into the therapist's office. Dr. Matthews welcomed us with a warm smile, and I noticed the way her demeanor seemed to put Sarah at ease. "I'm glad you both took this step," Dr. Matthews said, guiding us to our seats. "This is a safe space to share your feelings and work through the issues. Let's start by hearing from both of you about why you're here." I took a breath, ready to voice my concerns. "I'm here because I love my wife, but I feel completely betrayed by her actions. I need to understand why she chose to cheat rather than talk to me about her feelings." As I spoke, I could see Sarah's distress. She held her tissues tightly, tears threatening to spill. "I know I messed up," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been feeling lost for a long time and I didn't know how to reach out to Mike. The connection we had just felt. Distant." Dr. Matthews nodded thoughtfully. "It sounds like there may have been a breakdown in communication between you two. Can you both identify specific moments where you felt that distance?" As we delved into our past, I realized how easy it was to point fingers. Sarah recounted moments when she felt neglected during my long hours at work, and I shared how I felt blindsided when she sought attention elsewhere instead of coming to me. The back and forth was uncomfortable, but Dr. Matthews guided us with gentle encouragement, making it clear that both of us had contributed to the widening gap in our relationship. As the sessions progressed, we began to peel back layers of our emotions. We talked about our fears, insecurities, and the pressure we had put on each other without realizing it. I listened to Sarah express her feelings of inadequacy and loneliness, and I shared how overwhelmed I felt from work and trying to maintain a stable home. Each revelation was both enlightening and painful, as I struggled to reconcile the woman I loved with the one who had hurt me so deeply. Despite the breakthroughs, there were also moments of intense conflict. One session, after a particularly heated exchange, Sarah lashed out in frustration. "You don't understand what it's like to feel abandoned. I didn't cheat because I wanted to hurt you, I was just trying to cope." My heart raced as anger bubbled to the surface. "But Sarah, you didn't try to cope with me. You ran to someone else instead of talking to me." Dr. Matthews intervened, calming us down. "Let's take a moment to reflect on this. It's clear that you both are still hurting, and that's completely valid. But it's important to focus on rebuilding trust now instead of focusing on the past." That session took a toll on me. I left feeling drained, unsure if we were making any progress. The emotional roller coaster of therapy was exhausting. Some days I felt hopeful, believing we could rebuild our connection. Other days, I felt like we were digging ourselves deeper into a pit, unable to escape the pain of betrayal. Weeks turned into months, and I began to notice subtle shifts in Sarah's behavior. She was more attentive, more communicative. We began to do things together again, dinner dates, walks around the park, even small weekend trips. But there was always that nagging doubt in the back of my mind reminding me of the broken trust. I often found myself questioning her every move, scrutinizing her phone for messages, fearful that I would discover another betrayal. One evening, while we were watching a movie at home, I saw her phone light up on the coffee table, a notification from an unknown contact. My heart raced, and before I knew it, I had reached for it. It felt like a reflex, driven by the fear of being hurt again. "Mike, what are you doing?" Sarah exclaimed, her voice sharp and panicked. I glanced at her, feeling an overwhelming sense of guilt and betrayal. "I just wanted to see who it was," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't help it, I'm scared." "Scared of what?" she shot back. "Of me?" The tension in the room escalated quickly. I felt like I was spiraling back to where we started, and I hated myself for not being able to let go of my insecurities. "I don't know, Sarah. I'm trying to trust you, but I feel like every time I turn around, I'm reminded of what you did." In that moment, I saw the hurt on her face, and it pierced my heart. I realized that my inability to trust her was suffocating not only our relationship but also her as a person. "I'm working on myself, trying to be better for us. I need you to meet me halfway. I can't keep living like this, always on edge," she said, her voice breaking. I took a deep breath, feeling weary. The cycle of anger and hurt was exhausting, and I knew I had to choose a different path. "I don't want to keep feeling this way either. I love you, and if we're going to make this work, I need to find a way to trust you again." That comment hung heavily in the air. We both knew it wouldn't be easy, but it was a step. We sat together in silence, the weight of our past lingering, but for the first time, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could push through it together. As weeks turned into months, I continued to navigate the waves of trust and pain. I discovered that healing was neither linear nor quick. There were good days and bad days, and some days I felt like I was drowning. But through it all, we were learning to communicate better, to express our vulnerabilities, and to redefine our love. Facing the reality of our situation, I understood that the road to recovery was long and complicated. But I was determined to keep moving forward, no matter the obstacles. I had to believe that we could rise from the ashes of betrayal and emerge stronger than before. As the months passed, Sarah and I continued our therapy sessions and focused on rebuilding our relationship. We began to establish healthier patterns of communication, and I noticed small, yet significant changes in both of us. We started to share our thoughts and feelings more openly, and I found myself opening up to her about my fears and insecurities, something I had struggled with before. In turn, she became more transparent about her feelings, and slowly the walls we had built began to crumble. But just when I thought we were making real progress, an unexpected hurdle arose. One evening, I got home from work earlier than usual. I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. Perhaps I could surprise Sarah with a nice dinner or a spontaneous outing. As I walked through the door, however, I was greeted by an unsettling silence. I called out for her, but there was no response. I made my way to the living room, where I noticed her phone lying on the coffee table again. An unfamiliar name popped up in a message notification. My heart sank. I could feel the familiar tightening in my chest, the cold grip of fear and insecurity creeping in. I fought against the impulse to reach for it, but I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. After everything we had been through, could this be happening again? I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself. I thought about our therapy sessions and how much we had worked on trust. But as I stood there, the creeping doubt and paranoia began to overshadow my rational thoughts. I needed to know what was happening. Just as I was about to reach for her phone, I heard the front door open. "Hey, Mike, I'm back," Sarah called out cheerfully as she walked in, completely oblivious to the inner turmoil brewing inside me. I quickly composed myself, putting on a smile and pretending everything was fine. "Hey, how was your day?" "Pretty good. I went out shopping with Jessica. We got some new things for the house," she replied, her face lighting up with excitement. "Nice. What did you get?" I asked, trying to keep the conversation casual, even though my mind raced with thoughts about the message on her phone. She started recounting her shopping trip, and I forced myself to listen, but all I could think about was that message. I felt the weight of my insecurities pressing down on me. I knew I had to confront her about it, but I dreaded the confrontation. Later that night, after dinner, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Sarah, can we talk about something?" Her demeanor shifted immediately, and I could tell she sensed the seriousness in my voice. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I hesitated, feeling the tension rise in the room. "I noticed a message come through on your phone earlier. I don't know who it was from, but it made me feel uneasy." Her expression shifted. "Mike, I don't want to go through this again. I can't believe you're checking my phone after everything we've been through." "I'm not checking your phone. It was just there and it caught my eye," I explained, trying to maintain my composure. "I'm sorry, but I thought we were working on being open with each other." "Open? You're talking about trust, but then you're snooping. That's not fair to me." The anger bubbled up inside me, but I fought to keep my voice steady. "I'm not trying to snoop. I'm just trying to understand. You have to give me some grace here, Sarah. I'm still learning to trust you again." She took a deep breath and ran her fingers through her hair. "I get that, but I need you to trust me. There's no one else, I swear. But if you're truly committed to this, then we need to be honest with each other completely. If there's someone messaging you, I need to know," I said, my voice tinged with desperation. "Mike, I promise you it's just a work colleague. I'm trying to get better, but you have to stop doubting me," she said, her eyes pleading. As she spoke, I saw the sincerity in her gaze, and I felt the knot of insecurity begin to loosen slightly, but that familiar fear lingered in the back of my mind. I wanted to believe her, but the past haunted me. I know I have to do better too, I finally admitted, but I need you to be patient with me. It's hard for me to shake off these feelings. She nodded, her expression softening. I understand. Just as I'm trying to prove my commitment to you, I need you to work on trusting me again. It's a two-way street. We spent the rest of the evening talking about how we could build a stronger foundation based on trust and communication. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders as we shared our fears and frustrations, recognizing that both of us still had work to do. The following weeks were a mix of ups and downs. I focused on fighting back the insecurities that had plagued me, and Sarah continued to reassure me of her commitment. We set boundaries around communication, ensuring we shared our feelings about any lingering doubts. However, I still found myself checking in with Tom. One evening after work, we grabbed dinner, and I confided in him about my ongoing struggles with trust. It's a battle every day, Tom. One minute I feel like we're making progress, and the next I'm drowning in doubt again. He nodded knowingly. Trust is earned, Mike. You have to give it time. It's good that you're acknowledging your feelings and not just burying them, but you also have to let Sarah prove she's committed to you. Those words resonated deeply. I realized that I had to take a step back and allow Sarah to demonstrate her dedication to rebuilding our relationship. I needed to recognize her efforts instead of constantly looking for faults. As I committed to this new perspective, I started to notice more positives in our relationship. Sarah was making more effort to engage with me, and we began to plan activities together, game nights, hikes, and even cooking together. The laughter slowly returned, filling the empty spaces in our home. But just as I began to feel more secure, a familiar knock on the door brought a sudden jolt of anxiety. It was a surprise visit from Nancy, our neighbor. As soon as she walked in, I could sense the tension in the air. She looked at Sarah, then turned to me with a serious expression. "Mike, we need to talk," she said, her tone grave. My heart raced. What could this be about? I exchanged a glance with Sarah, who looked equally bewildered. "Is everything okay?" I asked, trying to maintain my composure. "I heard something that you need to know about Sarah," Nancy said, her words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. The anxiety gripped me as I braced for whatever revelation was coming. I needed answers, but at the same time I feared what those answers might entail. As I stood there, facing Nancy with my heart pounding in my chest, I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. I glanced at Sarah, whose expression shifted from confusion to concern, and I knew this was about to unfold in a way neither of us could predict. "Nancy, what's going on? Just tell us," I urged, needing to know what had stirred her to come over in such a serious manner. She took a deep breath, and I could see the conflict in her eyes. "I didn't want to get involved, but I feel like you deserve to know the truth." I overheard a conversation between Sarah and Jake at the coffee shop last week. They were meeting up. Time seemed to stand still as her words sank in. The air felt thick and heavy, and I could see Sarah's face pale. "What? That can't be true. I told you I cut ties with him," she exclaimed, her voice trembling with disbelief. Nancy shook her head, a pained look crossing her face. "I wish it wasn't true, but I heard them talking about old times, their connection." I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't just sit back and say nothing. I felt the ground shift beneath me, a rush of betrayal flooding my veins. The very thing I had feared the most was coming to fruition. I turned to Sarah, my heart racing with pain and anger. "Is this true? Were you meeting him behind my back?" Her eyes darted back and forth between us, and I could see the desperation in her expression. "No, I swear I was," she pleaded, her voice rising with panic. "This is the first I'm hearing about this. I haven't spoken to Jake since I told you everything." "Then why was he brought up at all?" I shot back, my voice strained. "Nancy, are you sure?" "I'm sorry, Mike. I wouldn't come to you with this if I was. I thought you needed to know. I didn't want you to be blindsided again," Nancy said, her voice softening. The weight of the accusation hung in the air, and I could feel my heart breaking all over again. I felt like a puppet with its strings cut, spiraling into despair. "How could you do this, Sarah? We were trying to rebuild trust." She stepped closer, her hands reaching out toward me, but I pulled away instinctively. Please listen to me. I didn't meet with him. I have no intention of going back to that. I love you, Mike. I'm trying so hard to make this work. Nancy shifted uncomfortably. I just thought you should know. I didn't mean to cause more trouble. I took a deep breath, my mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of this chaotic moment. I need time to think, I said finally, feeling the room closing in around me. I wanted to believe Sarah. I wanted to trust her, but the ground felt shaky and I was terrified of being deceived again. I turned to Nancy, my voice steadier than I felt. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate your honesty. As she left, the silence in the room was deafening. I felt a wave of emotions crash over me: confusion, anger, hurt. I turned to Sarah, whose eyes were wide with fear and hurt. Do you realize what this means? If you were lying to me about Jake, I don't know how I can even look at you right now. Mike, please, you have to believe me. I'm here, I'm fighting for us. I'm not the same person I was when I made those mistakes. I love you. The passion in her voice pierced through the fog of doubt. I stood there, torn between the desire to trust her and the fear of being hurt again. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, the wind whipping around me, ready to push me over the edge. Then prove it, I finally said, my voice shaking. Show me that you're committed to this, if you're truly done with. Jake, then cut all ties. No more excuses. I can't go on like this, living in fear of what you might do next. Tears streamed down her face. I will, I swear, I'll do anything you need, just don't walk away from me, please. I could see her desperation, and a part of me wanted to reach out and comfort her, but another part of me was still reeling, struggling to find a solid ground. I need space right now, I said softly, almost like a whisper. I need to think about what I want. That night I took refuge at Tom's place. I needed to clear my head and regroup. As we sat on his couch, I shared everything that had transpired. I don't know, man. I wanted to believe we were making progress, but now I don't know what to think. Tom listened intently before responding. You have to trust your instincts, Mike. If there's doubt, you need to address it. But you also have to consider whether you want to keep fighting for your marriage or if it's time to let go. I spent the evening lost in thought, weighing the options. I loved Sarah deeply, but I didn't know if I could endure another betrayal. The next day I returned home. Sarah was waiting for me, her eyes red and puffy from crying. I felt a pang of sympathy, but also a wall of fear and anger. I want to believe you, I said, my voice soft but firm. But I need to see real change. I need you to prove your commitment to us. It's going to take time. Trust isn't something that can be rebuilt overnight. She nodded, her expression earnest. I'll do whatever it takes, Mike. I can't lose you. In that moment, I knew I had a choice to make. I could either walk away from the relationship that had once brought me joy or take a leap of faith, hoping that we could rebuild what had been shattered. Over the next few weeks, we started to rebuild again, albeit cautiously. Sarah cut off all communication with Jake, and I made a conscious effort to let go of my insecurities. We returned to therapy, and I began to open up more about my feelings, learning to work through the emotions that had been festering inside me. While the path was fraught with challenges and heartache, we began to find moments of joy again. Laughter returned to our home as we took baby steps toward rebuilding our life together. I realized that love is not just an emotion, it's a choice. And while the scars of betrayal would always remain, we were learning to walk forward together, hand in hand. In the end, I learned that healing takes time, patience, and unwavering determination. Relationships are fragile, but they can also be resilient. As I reflect on this journey, I know that honesty and communication are the cornerstones of any lasting bond. And though our future remains uncertain, I am committed to navigating this path together. It won't be easy, but it's a journey worth taking.